What's up? How's it going, everybody? Today I'm going to be talking about the movie Supergirl, which is the second movie of the DCU. There's been a lot of talk about Supergirl lately, mostly because it's still in theaters at time of recording, so it's relevant right now. But also, there's been a lot of is it good, is it bad conversation going around, and what's good about it, what's bad about it, this, that, and the other. And so I just want to fill everyone in on my 2 cents because I just went to the theater and watched it last night. And so it's fresh in my head and I want to get out these thoughts. I'm just going to start out with some of the plot points and story decisions that I found interesting or that stuck out to me. The first one being is that they changed Supergirl's origin. Now in the comics, Supergirl is sent to Earth as a teenager to follow her cousin Clark Kent, aka Kal-El, to Earth after Krypton is deemed uninhabitable and Krypton is imploding, exploding, whatever the case may be. And so she is sent as a teenager who is older than the baby, Kal-El, and her pod is trapped in suspended animation, and so she doesn't arrive on Earth until Superman is a man, and so she is younger but technically older. In the DCU, she is just younger. Supergirl is not born until long after Krypton is dead, and that leads into something that I really like about this movie. I like that we introduce Argo as a concept, and we get to explore that in the second movie of the DCU. And I also like the confirmation that it no longer exists. Everyone else there, all the other Kryptonians, died of kryptonite poisoning. And although I would typically like superhero origins to stick as closely to the source material as possible, and to be comic accurate, I think that this works because of what we established in Superman. There are some things in the Superman movie that are things that I wasn't really sure how to feel about because they weren't how they were in the comics, and I like comic accuracy, like I just said, but I think you have to adapt at this point. Once you veer off the path with Superman's character a little bit, you have to do the same thing with Kara. You have to course correct and adjust. And so I think this version of events that they use in Supergirl really works for her character and how it relates to the Superman that we have established in Superman. And I like how it all aligns with the destruction of Krypton and with the existence of Argo for a short time. And I guess I should say, just to clarify, I am glad that Argo existed but no longer does. And the reason for that is, if Argo existed, the character of Supergirl that were presented in this movie would not be out in the galaxy, would not be out in the universe, would not be living on Earth. And the same could possibly be said for Superman. He is still pretty young as Supermen go. We've seen iterations of Superman that get older in years, and this Superman, David Corenswet's Superman, is still like early 30s. So there's a possibility that he would be spending time away from Earth, and we just don't need that at the birth of the DCU. We need to have Superman and Supergirl to be significantly involved in Earth-based events, or else they're not going to feel like the comic Superman and Supergirl that we know. Another thing I really liked about Supergirl was that they decided to have Kara's parents, Zor-El and Allura, have the type of story that we'd expect from Superman's parents. Ordinarily, Superman's father, Jor-El, would be this kind-hearted character who we know is a morally conscious person, and we know that even though baby Clark doesn't remember the things that he says to him, in a lot of iterations we hear Jor-El tell baby Kal-El that he's going to have immense power and that he has to protect people who can't protect themselves, protect the weaker humans, things like that. But if you've seen Superman, you know that that's not the direction they went in with Superman's parents, which I didn't really care for, but I think it worked for the story that they told, even though that's something that I would have liked to have been comic accurate. I don't really like the concept of making Superman's parents not great people, but I think that this makes up for it because Zor-El and Allura fill in those roles perfectly, and they're the ones who tell Kara that she's going to have immense power and that she has to look out for the less fortunate and protect those who can't protect themselves. And I think that that makes up for it in my mind. And I think it makes for an interesting contrast between Superman and Supergirl when you look at their personalities and then you look at the way they were raised. They both had very kind-hearted parents. I'm talking about Supergirl's actual parents, Zor-El and Allura, and then Clark Kent's parents, the Kents. They both had great parenting, but with that tragic loss in Supergirl's past, one that she remembers vividly because she was not a baby when it happened, it's interesting to look at how much the characters of Superman and Supergirl have in common, but also those core differences just set them apart and how that changes who they are entirely. Another thing that I really like that the movie did is at the end of the movie when the villain is defeated, after Kara and Ruthie have been chasing him all across the galaxy, to get revenge, to get justice, to get an antidote so Crypto doesn't die. Throughout the entirety of the movie, you know that Ruthie wants to kill Krem as revenge for her family's deaths. And I like that in the end, and really throughout the movie, Kara's trying to talk her down and trying to reason with her and trying to explain to her that she doesn't want to do this, it's going to affect her for the rest of her life. I like that at the end of the movie, she's able to successfully talk her out of killing him, but in that same breath, whenever she steps away, Kara kills him herself. It needed to be done, and I was worried that this was going to be one of those things where it's like, you know that the villain should die, needs to die, etc., but that moral code's going to get in the way. In some stories and with some characters, it really works. With Daredevil, I like the no-kill rule. Batman, no-kill rule is good. Superman, no-kill rule, he doesn't really have, but he does at the same time. You know, it's not he would never just execute somebody like that. But at the same time, I like the decision for Supergirl to kill him in this movie. Not only because I think that it needed to happen, but I like that it's another example that the experiences that Supergirl had in her past have changed her drastically from what Superman is. They're both good in their cores. They're both good in their souls, but Supergirl is willing to get her hands dirty in a way that Superman isn't really. Superman is that Boy Scout, whereas Supergirl has been jaded a little bit more, and I like that extra contrast and that willingness to do what needs to be done by that character. And personally, I do think that was the right decision for Kara to talk down Ruthie. I know that Ruthie had every right to have revenge, but Kara was right in that it would have changed her. Even though Krem definitely did need to die, Kara doing it is the right choice. She's an adult, and Ruthie is still a kid and hasn't tainted her soul yet. Moving on from the plot of the movie, something that was worrying me going into this movie is something that I think had a lot of people excited, including me in a way. I was excited to see that Jason Momoa was going to be playing Lobo. I know a lot of other people were as well. It's been a fan casting for a long time, and so I think people were just looking forward to that, on top of having Lobo in live action. And I can confidently say that that was good casting. Jason Momoa as Lobo really works, and I think Lobo was done just about as well as you could do him in live action. And so I have no problem with that. The reason why I was worried going into this is that I feel personally like a lot of fan castings don't make sense to me. I like a select few fan castings, but I feel like for the most part, the popular ones are just based on this person looks like this character. That's not enough for me. And I do think that looking like a character who has an iconic and established look is really important to me and to other people, to the fans, but also there's more to it than that for me. And to me, sometimes actors just don't fit the bill for performance. Even if they pull off the look, there's more to being a character than just looking like that character. But I'm glad that this wasn't one of those instances, and Jason Momoa did a great job as Lobo. Now, like I said at the beginning of this movie, there's been a lot of discourse about whether this movie is good or bad, and that's not without merit. There are arguments for both sides, things that are good, things that are bad. Although I did touch upon things that I liked so far, there are some things that are going to hold this movie back from being a great movie. And Krem is one of them, the main villain. He is basic. He is forgettable. Unfortunately, you know, a few years from now, when we get more projects in the DCU, he's not going to be at the top of villains. He's going to be probably at the bottom. And it's not because of bad character design. It's not because of a bad performance. It's just that the story does not allow him to be anything other than forgettable. And unfortunately, there's nothing that stands out about him that's worth remembering. There's not like a cool, unique weapon or a cool design or anything like that, or even a really cool action sequence that he does himself, like a cool one-on-one fight. He doesn't really have any of that. Even though he's involved in a few cool action sequences, you're going to be thinking about the other characters. You're not going to be thinking about him when you think back on those sequences. If you're planning to watch this movie, or even if you're not planning to and you just decide to on a whim one day, don't wait until the credits are over hoping for an after credit scene, because this movie does not have mid or end credit scenes, which is really uncommon these days for superhero movies. Almost every superhero movie has an end credit scene or mid credit scene, whether or not that amounts to anything or comes back around in the form of a sequel. Regardless of what it amounts to, almost every superhero movie has them these days, and so it was really weird to just not have any in this movie. Overall, I did enjoy watching this movie. There was never a time that I was like, oh, I wish I wasn't watching this, or I wish I didn't come to the theater to see this, or I'm bored. I did have a good time. That said, it's not on the level of Superman. Even though Superman wasn't a perfect movie, I would be more inclined to call that a great superhero movie. And Supergirl to me would just be kind of okay to good, somewhere in that range. Supergirl is not a great movie, but it's also not a bad movie. And I know a lot of people were saying it's a bad movie. I think that there are a few reasons for that. Number one being the obvious. There's a group of people who aren't going to like it for reasons that I don't really have to explain. But then there's also the fact that it follows Superman as the second movie of the DCU. And I think people's expectations are just kind of on a pedestal right now. We, as the audience, generally liked Superman. Superman was a hit with audiences, and I think that that hype has just been building ever since for what's going to become of the DCU. And I completely understand why people were getting their hopes up really high, but I think it's important to remember the start of the MCU. And that leads me to the best comparison I can make for this movie is that this movie is the Incredible Hulk of the DCU. The second movie of the universe. Incredible Hulk was not a bad movie, but it's not a great movie. It's not one that you look back on and be like, oh, that's one of my favorite MCU movies. Some people might, but the majority of people wouldn't. And I think that that's okay. Supergirl, like the Incredible Hulk, is just going to be that second movie that helps build the universe. It's a good movie. It's not a bad movie, but people are going to downplay it and say it's awful just because it's going to be surrounded by great movies. And even though Supergirl is not a bad movie, it's going to be like the Incredible Hulk. It's going to be a forgettable one in the grand scheme of things. And to everyone saying that the DCU is in trouble because of the mixed reception to Supergirl, calm down. Think about how the MCU started and then just take a breath. But yeah, that's all I've got to say for now about Supergirl. If you've seen this movie, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. And if you didn't really care for it, or you can't decide how to feel about it, or if it's kind of mid to you, what would you have changed to make this a great movie? But yeah, if you want to help me out here on YouTube, liking this video, commenting on this video, subscribing to the channel, or checking out some of my other videos, all help me grow the YouTube channel. I've done other superhero content, I've done other DC movies, I've done Marvel movies, I've done other kinds of movies, TV shows, a little bit of gaming, this, that, and the other. I've done a lot of stuff at this point, so if any of that interests you, go check it out. But yeah, until next time, bye.